Hi, everyone. You're about to watch my interview with Scott Berman, the writer-director of Resolution. We had a really great conversation. Scott has created a really innovative new film experience that I'm really excited for you guys to hear about. What's really interesting is that we both come from the same area in Texas, and the theater where Scott developed this show, it's a planetarium at the University of North Texas, the same planetarium that I grew up going to. So I think Scott and I had a really nice conversation. We had a great connection talking about our local areas. Now enjoy my interview with Scott Berman, writer-director of Resolution. Hi, everyone. My name is Vin. With me today is Scott Berman, director of Resolution, a Cinephonic Rhapsody of the Soul, an all-new immersive dome movie experience. Scott, can you introduce yourself for our audience?
My name's Scott Berman. I'm the director, writer, producer, and one of the animators on the film Resolution.
First, for our audience, can you set a background? Because I think a lot of people watching this interview haven't had a chance yet. So can you explain for our audience what is Resolution?
First of all, just on the broad spectrum of it, it's an immersive experience for an album. So you go into a planetarium or a dome theater like you would in the Sphere or like in the Omni Theater in Fort Worth, where we have a 300 residency there, or the planetarium in Denton. And you're listening to the full album and you're just watching this spectacle happen around you that tells this narrative story. It starts off at a campfire, and so there's 8 people seated around a campfire, and each one of the songs tells a story about each individual person at the campfire. It's a mixture of all sorts of different style of animation, live action mixed with it. We really felt like, because these stories were personal to these individuals seated at the campfire, that they should look completely different than from one another. So one might look like Sergeant Pepper's or Yellow Submarine. One might look like Pink Floyd The Wall. One might look like Dire Straits Video. Just all sorts of different types of animation. We used everything from old school 2D cell shaded animation. Like, we had some Disney artists on this that actually hand drawing some of the work, and then
that's incredible.
Everything from all of that all the way up to the latest technology and building immersive environments. This program called Quill, where you're actually in a headset inside a giant room where you're hand drawing.
Wow, no kidding.
By hand. And then there's Cinema 4D, and I mean, we pretty much used every single type of medium that we possibly could. Give you a little backstory. Resolution is a 45-minute narrative story based upon the album Salvage by the Polyphonic Spree. It's an immersive experience. As a singer for the band, Tim and I have been best friends since the 7th grade. And when he started his first band, Tripping Daisy, back in the 90s, I was an art student at North Texas University. And he asked me if I would do a visual show for his band that he was about to start. And I said, sure, man, let's do it. And so the rest is history. We went on to do that.
So that was Tim, like 30 years ago, right?
Yeah. So Tim and I have been doing immersive music and video storytelling for over 30 years now.
Wow. I wanted to really ask about this. So how did your work with Tripping Daisy evolve into this?
Well, with Tripping Daisy, it started off sort of like a Fillmore West light show, with oil and water and all analog stuff, slide projectors, film projectors. So actually, that's kind of a funny story. The first show, Tim had 7 songs. We were making this visual show together that we didn't even know how to do yet. We went to Goodwill and bought a projector from Goodwill. It had like a wax pencil on it for $13, and I didn't have $13 at the time, so I rubbed the one off and got our first slide projector for $3. And then Tim used to dumpster dive, and he found like the first slides in a dumpster, and they were all like these slides of like this family, but they had been, worn by the sun, and so they were real psychedelic looking. And that was our first light show.
Incredible. So the band is performing.
Like a sheet, at an open mic night. And that turned into over 100 projectors at what used to be called Starplex Amphitheater with the 25,000 seat venue, where we had about 100 of these projectors, like slide projectors, film projectors, 16 millimeter overhead projectors, transparencies that we would put over
Yeah.
on overheads, and oil and water and all that. And then when we went on the road, we were always trying to do whatever we could. We might be in a 50-seat place one night, and we might be in a theater the next night that holds 4,000.
Wow.
So we never knew what we were walking into the day of, too. So we would just kind of walk in and look at it and say, all right, how are we going to transform this place into a spectacle? And so if it was like what I was describing before, if it was like a 10-foot ceiling, we would hang projectors in the rafters and spray things all over the place, to where we were always doing 360 sort of visuals, not just behind the band, but all the way around. And that sort of developed as we moved along. And then after Tripping Daisy, I went on, I started doing raves, where I was building these 360 environments.
Wow.
Before even immersive was a catchphrase, So back then it was immersive in a totally different way. We would do things in these giant fields where we would put screens up and embedded in the trees, and we would project all over everywhere, on a piece of land with a bunch of people at a rave. Or we'd be inside and we'd do these screens that wrapped all the way around you.
That's so cool.
With a lot of analog stuff and video, and at that time it was video and analog. And Tim and I had always talked about doing a planetarium show back in the day when we were doing Tripping Daisy. And we just never did it. And then Polyphonic Spree came around. I would occasionally do work with Polyphonic Spree because I wouldn't go on the road anymore. But every time they were here in town, we did a big show, and then they had this Christmas show that we did every year. But anyway, it began to get, the technology began to evolve. And so we started doing, video projection. And then going to the last week, we did a show here in Dallas on a gigantic LED screen. So anything from that. But anyway, when Tim created this new album, Salvage Enterprise, it really hit me like a ton of bricks. I listened to it and it was really, this particular album hit me really emotionally. And even though all of his stuff moves me, or else I wouldn't have been doing stuff with his music for 30 something years, but this one in particular had something unique about it that I really loved. And Tim was we thinking about like, how are we going to release this? And Tim started going off at, the first time all of our friends heard the album, we were all sitting around a campfire out on a friend of mine's land. We were just listening to the music. We're like, this is a really cool experience outdoors. And Tim started doing these listening experiences all up and down the West Coast. And through those listening experiences, started understanding like that this was a real album that needed to be listened to in its entirety. So we talked about this, and I said, man, this is the time to do this planetarium show. We the Sphere's coming in Vegas. This was before the Sphere was built. We had heard about it. So we went up to Denton and watched the show in Denton. And we walked out of there just going, oh my God, we got to do this. And so that was the next step, was just to take the songs that he had written. The album hadn't even been released yet, and organize them in a specific way that told a story. The album wasn't built to tell like one single story. Each vignette sort of has a theme behind it, but we organized it in a way that it could have a narrative that sort of spoke through the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. That's what I love so much about this, because when I went to Fort Worth to see the Dome, I didn't know what I was going to see. And I was just looking at the list with my friend, and we're like, the Pink Floyd thing sounds good, or the space thing sounds cool. But I was like, what is this resolution? And we just went in completely like on a whim. We saw good reviews, and we're like, whatever, let's try it. And I think it's the perfect thing, because in Fort Worth now, their Dome is like 8K. It's been totally renovated. And I think resolution is the perfect thing to sample the Dome, because it gives you so many different styles. It's completely made for this 360 immersive experience. And each of those filmmakers that you mentioned, each of them uses the Dome so differently and such with a different animation style. So if you want to check out what can you do with a Dome, this is designed to show off what you can do with a Dome, right?
Yeah. I mean, same thing on the technical side of it. If you want to try every single way possible to build something for a Dome, we pretty much did it. I mean, there should be a blueprint written from this. I mean, we've given a lot of advice to a lot of people based upon the fact that we use stuff that was made for the dome, stuff that wasn't made for the dome, stuff that was shot in 360, stuff that was shot in regular 16 by 9.
Wow.
So we've done all of it, in this one film, and that was intentional. That wasn't just by necessity. We sought out artists that had specific styles that we felt would work really well.
What I love is that each of those artists, each of those filmmakers brings something unique, so different, but it all comes together as one cohesive whole. And I think that fits with the theme, because you have on a music album, you have all these different songs, but together it's one cohesive album. Right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Yellow Submarine, Sgt. Pepper's, but if you look at like Abbey Road or the White Album, each song is totally different, but together it's one album experience.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I prefer to listen to the whole album, because it is an experience. When you switch from A side to B side, and it goes from like She's So Heavy to Here Comes the Sun, what a transition, right? And I think we've lost that in like this iPod, Spotify era, where we just listen to things on shuffle and then playlist. So I love that with Resolution, you're listening to a whole album, start to finish. Every song is different. Maybe you don't like every song, maybe you don't like every animation style, but what I like is different from what you like. And there's something that captures each person, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language. That's exactly the intention of it too. It's like people too. Everybody doesn't like everybody. Everybody, and then there's certain people you relate with really well, and it is like an album. By the way, the more you watch it, it's like an album in the sense of the first time you listen to an album, you pick 3 or 4 songs, you're like, oh my God, these are my favorite. But if you notice, like when you listen to an album over and over and over again, some of the deeper cuts are the ones you're like, oh my God, that's the song it just didn't hit me that same way the first time, but now I get it. And I think one of the things that's interesting about this format is that it's sort of like it takes you a while on an album to really kind of understand what the feeling of it or grasp that. And then with the visual storytelling that goes along with it, it sort of jumps you beyond that first listen right off on the very first time you listen to it. And you're talking about this age that we're in right now where you don't listen to albums anymore. I mean, lots of people don't even listen to full songs anymore because everything's at their fingertips.
Yeah.
I'm a parent of a 19-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter that grew up right in this. And it's interesting. I mean, all sorts of technology is that way too. It's like, it's not that special to listen to a song like it used to be. Just the same way it's not so special to watch a movie like it used to be, or to watch something on television like you used to do, because it was an event back in the day when
Thursday, 7 p.m. Everyone comes.
This is on. Everybody comes down. You can't record it, so you got to watch it. And so it became an event. Even when you got into the Blockbuster days, at least it was an event to where you went to the movie store, you grabbed the movie, you're like, this is what we're watching tonight. Everybody, we're having movie night. And like looking at the art, it's the same thing with an album. It's like when you used to get an album, it was a thing, like, oh my God, cool, we're going to listen to this record. And you didn't get 1,000 records. You couldn't have 1,000 records. So when you did that, you sat down, you got prepared for it, you put the album down, and you put it on and you listen to at least the whole side. And then if you recall, like then they started getting into these singles, records, 45s, and then they had a way to where you could stack them. I don't know if you knew this or
no.
There was a way to stack it to where it would play one and then it would drop the next one and it would play the next one. And even that was like, but it was a chore to put it on. So it became this event. And so we've definitely lost that. And to people that are my age that have listened to albums and experienced that before, it's a nod back to that. And it reminds us when we walk in and see this whole entire film and listen to the whole record at once, it's a reminder of what it used to be in a whole new way, right? For my children's generation, it's totally new to them because, my son listens to albums. My daughter doesn't. My daughter's just, they both have ADHD. Like I think every kid in the United States probably has it now. But it's just like next,
They
They put a playlist together, and it's never listening to it in one sequence.
Yeah.
And so when they've gone in and seen this, they're like, oh my God, like, first of all, it gives them a way to put their phone down and be tuned in for 45 minutes to a piece of art put together. And they've just had an incredible experience doing this, because they didn't realize that albums could tell stories like that.
Yeah.
Very loose. It's up to a lot of interpretation, but there's themes behind it, and every actually, whether you see this or not, as a viewer, every single one of them has a pretty deep story behind it, that if it resonates with you, you'll get it. And if it kind of does, and you're just watching, you may enjoy the visual, but not totally get the story.
And like you said, like, the more you come back to it, the more different things will grow on you. So maybe at first you're like, I don't get, the puppets and the cars, but maybe you come back to it later. Maybe that means something to you later, right?
Yeah. The way we built this, the first thing I did was Tim gave me the album, the collection of songs before it was even an album. And I said, okay, well, tell me what each of these means. He said, I don't want to do that. I want you to go listen to them, and you tell me what you think they. So I spent 4 months doing nothing but listening to the album over and over and over and over
just
again.
On loop, on repeat.
On loop. Like, oh my God. Like, there's no one that's listened to it more than me. It's impossible.
Yeah. Not even Tim.
Not even Tim. For sure. Not Tim, definitely.
Wow.
And so the first thing I wrote about each of them was an emotion that it evoked, whether it was hope or solitude or loneliness or like the puppet, childhood exuberance.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Like, this song is about when you're young and you're free, and you can run to the park and do whatever you want, and you don't have all this weight of the world on you. And so that's why we chose that particular sequence, was because I went to each of the artists. I said, like, some of these had defined stories to them, and some of them were just kind of ideas.
Yeah.
But all of them had an emotion that if we hit the mark on the emotion, that's all I really care about, is that you get the emotional side of the story.
Then how did you balance that with, like, one cohesive vision across all the shorts? If each short's focusing on a different color, a different emotion, how did you somehow keep it united?
Well, that was a challenge because using different art styles, we organized them in a way to where, like, in the beginning of the movie, the songs are more about, recognizing obstacles that you're trying to overcome and sort of coming face to face to those, and realization and understanding maybe that you need to lean on other people, or that other people can lean on you, and that there's this hope. And then the middle part of it, there's this sort of taking action part that happens, in the flying scene, where it's like, I'm leaving this place that
I'm breaking free. Yeah.
I'm breaking free of this. If you notice, all of the people that were in the campfire, they fly along with him.
Okay. I thought I saw that. Yeah. I thought I recognized that. Wow.
The characters, so they're all making this transition together. And then the latter part of the movie is sort of about what happens when you take that step and you move past the obstacles you're trying to overcome. All those are about freedom, being proud of yourself, what you've accomplished. What happens when you take a step and other people follow you. Yeah. And so that's why it sort of comes back to that ending part where the guy walks up, that's the character that was in the, in the flying scene. He's at the end too, when he walks up and sort of walks into the sun and sort of realizes all this, everything that he created by taking those steps that he took. And that's why everybody comes together sort of at the end.
Yeah. Anyway, it's such an emotional story. Yeah.
Yeah. That's telling the whole story. But so back to the question, how do we make all those fit together? Well, we talked about having a unifying thread between all of them. And when I was figuring out these stories to begin with, the first time, I hit a roadblock, I had like 4 or 5 of these pieces written, but I couldn't figure out how they all connected together. And I just put my headphones on and walked out to the park and started listening to the album again, for the 10,000th time, And you know how sometimes if you're in you have earphones on or whatever and you're walking, you know how sometimes like you feel like you're walking in a music video?
Exactly. It's like Baby Driver. Everything just choreographs to the music. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what was happening this day. Like I walked to the park, this woman was playing with her child. Bubbles were floating across in front of my face. I was looking at these kids, this mother and daughter, and this seemingly beautiful moment. She was like vacant. She wasn't even paying attention. She was looking somewhere else. And I started thinking, like, why is she not into this right now? This is a beautiful moment. I'm a parent, like I've been there. And I'm looking back on that going, God, those were the best days when that, why was she not present, And then I walked by this kid who was playing guitar singing at the top of his lungs, not afraid of what anybody thought of him, And I walked by a homeless person. I thought, I really looked at this person like, man, this person hasn't always been here.
Right.
Like, what is his story before that?
Yeah.
And then I walked by this is kind of when it all hit me. I walked by this girl. She was about maybe 18, and she was on this cement pedestal with the fountains beside her, and she was drawing sort of, but she between her legs, and she was kind of covering it with sidewalk chalk she was drawing. And so I walked by kind of close enough to look, and I looked down and it said, God is here.
Oh.
And it just kind of blew my mind, like, that this was this beautiful piece of art and this expression that she had of herself and the feeling that she was having when she was drawing that, but she was so reserved and she didn't want anybody else to see it. And like, it was at that moment that I was like, oh my God, this isn't about one person. It's about stories of multiple people.
A community.
Yeah. And so then I started figuring out, that's when it all kind of clicked. Yeah. And I said, how am I going to put this together? And the first thing I was going to do it in a park with park benches to where you'd walk around and somebody be at a park bench, then you dive into their story and so on and so forth. But it didn't work, technically with 360, you needed to be inside and everything needed to be facing in. And this park bench down the street was like everything was facing out. And then it just hit me that I should do the campfire because that's where Tim had been doing.
Okay.
Time. And
so it didn't start with the campfire idea. Wow. But it's perfect because it connects to what Tim was doing with his listening experiences.
Yeah, that was like I went back to the office and I got my camera and I went out and I tried to test the park bench thing, and then oh my God, when it hit me, I was like, oh my God, the campfire. Yeah, it made so much sense from multiple levels.
All the way back to ancient history, telling stories around a campfire, right?
Exactly.
Like I just love that. This is such futuristic technology, but you're taking us back to the campfire. Each person is telling us a story, a very deep personal story. We go on a journey with them, but it's all back to this communal campfire experience.
Yeah,
and it's just. I love that you finally landed on that because that is the perfect thing. And it's a dome. It's a 360 experience, a campfire. It's so perfect.
It's perfect for it. And, I think the thing that I've learned the most about this, through this experience of creating this is just to open your eyes and everything will be revealed to you. Yeah. It's really more about listening than thinking, just like watch, listen, and think about it deeply in these stories. The whole thing was revealed to me. It's revealed to me from like listening to the music over and over and over again. And
it tells you what it is. Yeah.
And it tells you what it is if you listen, And same thing with the artists that we're using. It's like, okay, I've got this concept, like the puppet thing, for example. That wasn't the concept at all. That's one of the things that I had nothing to do with writing that specific piece. It was going to be a kid riding on his bike through the trees. And they said, so it's like childhood exuberance. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what
it does capture it. Yeah. Their interpretation of what you were saying.
Yeah. And so they came back to me and said, hey, what about, puppets on RC cars? And I was like, well, that's such a whacked idea. I think I love it. Let me see how it fits in with the film. And it did fit because it was that emotion. We just had to figure out how to sort of tie it together with everything else. But that's the same thing. It's like, open your eyes, open your ears, and listen to what people are telling you. And the ideas will come to you if you if you're receptive, you know?
Yeah, and I think your technical creative director, Ryan Hartsell, he did such a good job combining all these different formats and mediums, live action, animated, 2D, 3D, and just blending it. It works so well. How did you design this for different dome sizes? Because I imagine that's a whole problem right there.
Yeah, Ryan, on the technical side, that was a key moment.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I came back to the office that day,
Same day.
That's that same day when I came back to the office after going to the park, right?
Yeah.
It's like, man, I need somebody to shoot this campfire.
Yeah.
So that's how I met Ryan. Ryan came in to shoot the campfire, and then when Ryan came in to shoot the campfire, he was like, "Wow, what are you going to do about this scene and this scene and this scene?" I don't know, and I'm like, "Can you just like come alongside me and be a partner on this?" And he did, and he's full time with me now in Cinephonic Studio. So I hired him and Brian Bowman from Flight School and Real Effects, and they really took this thing to a whole new place that I didn't even know that I didn't know.
Yeah. Because I think, for example, like when you're at South by Southwest, you have, I think, a pretty small dome. When you're at the Sky Theater at UNT, you have like a kind of small dome, but then in Fort Worth, you have the giant AK dome, which is like, I think, the second biggest in the country, and that must have been an incredible challenge. So they did a great job.
The challenge on that really is domes are either flat or they're 10 degrees or they're 40 degrees. So the focal point is different in every one of them. So we kind of shot in the middle to where it would work on all of them. But actually getting this from 4K into 8K, because it's not typical 4K. 4K is normally 4096 by 1000, whatever. But this in the dome format, it's 4000 by 4000. So it's four times larger than what you would see on your television. If it's 8K by 8K, it's 16 times larger than what you would put. So, I mean, the computing power and the rendering time and all that is just insane.
Wow. I wanted to mention, just to an earlier point, one of my favorite things about this, I don't think it was intentional, but so like we're all in an audience watching this, right? And of course, in the theater, it's a communal experience. You're bringing us back to that. But because of the dome, there's a lot of light in the theater. And at first, I was kind of like, there's too much light. I can see the people around me. I don't like this. But then that's the point. It's a communal experience, and that I'm aware of the people around me. And we're all sharing this, watching it together. And I'm thinking, I wonder what she's thinking. I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder what they're feeling in this moment. Like I was sharing it with them. And it brings us back to like the point of the campfire, the point of the movie theaters, that I'm not just at home watching this by myself, that I'm sharing this. We all share this moment together at this like moment in history, this moment in time, at this one place. We all did that together. We all have thoughts and opinions about it. But I'm just wondering what's in her head, what's in his head. And it's this like empathy moment kind of between us all.
I mean, that's the point of the whole movie, is to have it's empathy, is to look at other people and think about, not just sharing this experience like you're talking about, but the point of the movie is, these are strangers sitting around a campfire. And, if you think about daily life, when you're driving down the freeway and somebody passes you up or cuts you off, and you're just like, what are you doing? And instead of like thinking that way, what if everybody thought like, man, obviously you're in a hurry, let me let you in and get out of your way. And maybe there's something that you need help with, right? And maybe there's something going on that you're not thinking about. So it is this empathetic moment. And if you look at all the stories, you see somebody at the campfire, you don't know what you're about to see, what's inside their head, So anyway, it is about empathy and this communal thing together. It's interesting because it's not that same way in Denton. It's darker in Denton. So there's pluses and minuses of that. Sometimes you can get more into the story and not think about your surroundings. But in the Omni in Fort Worth, it is exactly like what you're talking about, because that screen is so bright that you can see people. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, movie theater isn't like that either, even on the bright scenes, because the light, the lumens are intense. But yeah, you're experiencing that together. And if you think about, I'll just give you an example of like, why do you go to concert? When you can listen to the music. And the quality sounds better at home. Yeah, done better at home in your headset. Like it's going to sound better there than it actually is in the concert. And you're basically, if you're in like the Cowboys football stadium and you're watching a show there, all you're doing is watching somebody on a video screen anyway. But the reason why you're doing it
It's for the
is
feeling.
the moment when everybody sings and everybody's experiencing this together is a completely different experience than experiencing that. That is something that we're excited about and aware of. And while we think it's better than watching it on, we're in the Apple Vision Pro headset, which is super cool. But we purposely look for a place, it's called Sandwich Theater, where you sit in a planetarium and experience it like that. And their next version are going to have people being able to watch it collectively together, because that is a big deal. It's the difference between listening to an album or being at a concert.
A quick example, some of my favorite bands right now are doing album concerts, like Death Cab for Cutie, or I watched Air, a French band in Paris. They played their most famous album, start to finish. And every single person knew every single lyric, start to finish. We all know like the playlist. We all know what's coming. We all know the words. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I can listen to it at home, but just everyone's like shouting, screaming, and we're all sharing that together. And that's just the magic. And I love that in some way you're trying to help bring that back. Just listen to the album, start to finish, share together, while revolutionizing movie technology. I want to ask, where do you see the dome theater technology going in the future? I know there's like Cosm, and they're trying to do some stuff with that too, but what is your vision?
Yeah, I really think that, you've got all these planetariums that weren't built for entertainment. They were built for education. So there's been this sort of long grind about getting planetariums to show entertainment, entertaining films instead of just educational. And a lot of them, are funded by grants, so they're mandated to show educational film. It's getting to the point now where they've seen the sphere, they've heard about Cosm, and they're sitting inside their dome theater going, this is an entertainment facility.
Yeah.
And how do we make that switch? And lots of them are doing it. Like we're going to be in the SAT in Montreal, which is an amazing planetarium, but it's super artsy. They're used to doing stuff like this. We're going to be in the Dolly Museum in Florida, which is a dome, except it's got like a hole cut in the top of it. But it's a Salvage Dolly Museum.
Oh, wow.
They're used to art and entertainment. So a lot of these planetariums are used to doing that. But the vast majority of them, 3,000 around the world, might have shown 10% of them might have shown Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon or something like that, but they don't understand how to market their venue as entertainment. And I see that's a major shift that's happening, because they're starting to look at opportunities, and ours is one of the first films that are strictly entertainment based, and a few
I remember when I was a kid going to the Fort Worth Theater like 20 years ago, and I was just thinking, this is the future. Why are there no more? We need more movies like in this format. We need more like this. And I'm glad here in 2025 we're finally going in that direction.
So I definitely see that. And then Cosm is going in retrofitting a lot of these planetariums with their technology, with the LED screen.
I know they're doing the Matrix right now, right?
Yeah, Cosm is. And Cosm's a unique venue because they're more centered around sports activities and things like that. It's less of a theater, it's more of a social thing, but they do show some films like that. But the Sphere has plans to build a bunch of smaller 5,000 seat spheres all around the United States. And then there's pop-up venues that are getting pretty advanced. We're looking into doing some stuff like that as well.
South by.
Yeah. But on a bigger scale. Like in some metropolitan areas. Keep your ears open for that. Some overseas, some here. But I think, in general, dome theater is really starting to hit its stride after 100 years, which is crazy because the first planetarium was over 100 years ago.
I think just to wrap this up, going back to the emotional experience and the kind of lessons of all this, what do you want people to take away from this experience? What do you think is the goal here?
Well, say hi to Ryan.
Wow, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Little cameo.
Because we just talked about him earlier.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again?
What do you want people to take away from the show? Some of your favorite audience reactions or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. So the first show that we ever did in Denton, I didn't know what kind of, I showed it to my friends and family, like 10 people, they're like, oh, I love it. It's great. I'm like, okay. The same day, like a real audience is buying tickets,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
there's 60 or 75 people, sold out coming
Wow.
in, and I have no idea what's going to happen.
Wow.
It's kind of having a little Larry David moment, like panic attack, going, "Oh my God, I don't like it. What's going on? I charged them too much. They think they were going to see Avatar. Like they don't understand it. Just all this stuff." And I walked out, and it wasn't by design, but I had to open the door for everybody, and then I just put the doorstop in there, and
Right.
everybody was walking by, and some people had tears in their eyes and were asking to talk to me, and it was just kind of overwhelming. And so I hung out for probably 2 hours afterwards talking to
Oh, wow.
people.
Wow.
The first person that talked to me was this 15-year-old, and he came by himself.
Hmm.
First, he asked if he could talk to me, and I said, "Yeah, sure, man."
Yeah.
And he looked me in the eye and he said, "I needed to see this today." And I was like, "Oh, cool, man. Thanks for coming." And I just kind of it didn't sink in until he said, "No, I mean, you don't understand." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "I struggle with mental health issues, and now I know everything's going to be okay."
Wow.
And like that moment, like
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I don't care about anything else other than that. Like, I don't care what happens to the film. It could be a flop.
Yeah.
Like, this is why I made it for this one kid.
Oh, man.
Because it just, the stories that I've heard from people relating to certain parts. And I know this because I love Tim's music, and Tim's music does this to me, right?
Right.
Or else I wouldn't be able to create this,
Yeah.
right? If it didn't hit me emotionally.
Yeah.
But I didn't really grasp, I think, the combination of being in an immersive environment, hearing the music, watching the visuals, and connecting with different pieces of it. What an impact it would have on people. And so, for me, what I want them to take from it is I want them just to look at other people and have empathy,
Yeah.
and to say, well, if I have empathy, then other people have empathy for me, so I'm not alone either.
Yeah.
Right. And I want people to understand, I don't mean this to sound trite or anything, but like there is hope,
Hmm. Hmm.
and especially in the time that we're in right now, where it seems like there's all around us no hope
Hmm.
over and over and
Hmm.
over.
Hmm.
We need to be uplifted, and we need to understand that if we just keep putting one foot in front of the other, good things can happen. They don't always happen. It's not like everybody's going to get their miracle, but if you don't have any hope, you're definitely not getting your miracle. And it's just going to happen by accident.
Yeah.
I think that's the point of it, and that's what I like people to get out of it, is to care for one another and think about, like, if everybody thought about everybody else first
Hmm.
before them, I mean, people would be thinking about you all the time, and you wouldn't have any problems either.
I
And
think
that's the
what makes
most
it so,
important thing. Yeah.
yeah, because you focused on the emotion of each song. And I think because you were able to isolate that early on, they built the animation around that. I think that's why we all have such a profound experience at the end, because we go through the spectrum of emotions without even thinking about it consciously. So great job. Yeah.
Well, man, I'm glad you got that out of it. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to hear.
Is there anything else you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
We're in the middle of launching this worldwide, going to a lot of different places. We've had some great success that has come from a lot of hard work and, leaning on a lot of people to help us get there.
Hmm.
A huge team that helped us with this. We're right now in consideration for an Emmy,
No
which
way.
is
Wow.
great. So we're keeping our fingers crossed with that. We're like in the final 13 for Outstanding Emerging Media Program.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow.
And if we get to the final 5, then we're officially nominated. So we're close to that. There's a lot of good stuff happening, and just come see our show, man. Wherever you're at, we're going to get it to you. So that's
Well,
really
thank
it.
you. I really appreciated this, and I loved it. I think it was not just as a cinema experience, but emotional, musical, everything together. So congratulations to what you and Tim and Ryan, what you guys all created. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great night. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. And be sure to check out Resolution when it comes to a theater near you. Right now, it's playing at the Sky Theater at University of North Texas in Denton. And it's also playing at the Fort Worth Omni Theater, which is a giant 8K screen. And soon it's going to be spreading across the US, UK, Europe. This is a giant, exciting new experience. So keep your eyes peeled. And I hope you enjoy Resolution when it comes to a dome theater near you. Bye. And special thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see even more videos and extended content, please subscribe at the link in the description.
Thank you.